Okay, hello everyone. I'm a Diamond 3 solo queuer, as you can see, and what I'm going to try to do is do a video on what I believe is really good top laners right now in the preseason. And overall I believe that'll go into the regular season, although obviously some things will be changed, and if the video does really well, then I might try a support video, because as you can see, I main support and top lane. So let's go to champions. Aatrox. He's played top lane sometimes, so let me go to him first. Right now, I would say Aatrox is probably a 4 out of 10. He just doesn't have what you want, really. He's not really tanky, especially without his passive fully stacked. He can't really split push amazingly. He loses a lot of duels 1v1. His early lane isn't very strong at all, actually. You can maybe cheese certain laners, but most of the time you get cheesed pretty hard, especially if your passive's not stacked. You're just too squishy. It feels like a lot of times if they just buff a little bit of his tankiness or a little bit of his damage, then he would actually be decent. But yeah, they didn't. So I think Aatrox is just in a bad spot overall. That's probably enough about him. Okay, let's see. I mean, Akali's played top sometimes, but I mean, she's good if you snowball, she's not if you don't. So Chogas, I think Chogas, he's in an okay spot right now, actually. I would say Chogas probably a 5 out of 10, maybe a 6 out of 10. The thing about Chogas is that your early lane is okay. Cho'Gath actually has an amazing disengage, which a lot of people underestimate. You never want to try to dive someone as Cho'Gath because they'll just kite you, but you have amazing disengage, which a lot of people underestimate. He's kind of like the Janna of top lane. You can basically just get away from anything. Like if a Darius is trying to get 5 stacks on you, you just Q him, walk about 2 steps, silence him, and walk away. Like there's no way he's going to catch up to that. So you can basically disengage from anything. The issue with Cho'Gath is sort of what I just said. You really rely on your team. You're basically just a disengager. You don't really do a lot of damage at all, actually. You can't really 1v1 a lot of opponents like Fiora. There's quite a few team comps Cho'Gath's just really bad in, and you'd much prefer something else. That's why I say 5 to 6 out of 10. Let's see. Okay, so next is Darius. Darius right now, I think he's in an amazing spot, actually. I think Darius is probably, I would put Darius as an 8 to 9 out of 10. Yeah, Darius is just so good right now. There's not very much that can beat him in lane, actually. Like, he has the pull to deal with ranged, and anyone that is a tank, Darius will just destroy. Like, Darius tank against tank, Darius wins every time. Yeah, so definitely try to learn Darius. Like, and there's not many like squishies. Like, yeah, Darius' hardest counter right now actually is Riven, according to statistics and all that. But the thing is that even a good Darius against Riven, what he'll do is he just will never fight her ever, and he will just play extremely safe and just outscale her so hard. Like, a lot of people don't realize if Riven doesn't snowball, she actually does not scale well into the late game, compared to especially a Darius. Like, if you go even with a Riven, like, you'll probably be like Aatrox, Gage, Black Cleaver, and maybe one more item, and then she'll be, you know, Ghostblade, Hydra, maybe one more item, and we're talking like a QSS, maybe tops. Who's going to do more in the team fight? A Darius with those items or a Riven with those items? The Darius, every single time. So right now I think Darius is, honestly, I think they need to nerf the ability he has to 1v1 tanks, because what is a Malphite going to do against a Darius? Darius just full stacks and does like 1,000 of his health. And he has so much armor pen, stacks Black Cleaver so fast. Like, there's really no way. Like, Darius is just an amazing split pusher, amazing team fighter. His only weakness is entire team comps that can kite, but you're never going to face that in solo queue, so I would say Darius is one of the strongest at the moment. Okay, Dr. Mundo. Dr. Mundo is about to get some nerfs, but how it stands right now, I would say Dr. Mundo is a 7 to 8 out of 10. Dr. Mundo, like Darius, has a very safe lane if you play safe. But unlike Darius, he can handle ganks a lot better. You can just simply, like, literally cleaver them and walk away. So, I would say Mundo's biggest issue is anyone that has an extreme burst, like at level 6 top lane, they can just snowball off of you, and that's really not good. Like a really good Irelia player can snowball off of Mundo, but if you can survive and just play really safe, Mundo will pretty much outscale everyone. So yeah, and obviously his team fight's not as strong as Darius, but you do tank a lot longer, and you have more poke, obviously, so he's better against, if you do face a team comp like a Nivea, or, you know, something like that, like team comp's built to handle Darius, then you can just go Mundo. He's essentially played similar to Darius, but not quite the same, if that makes sense. They're both like, they try to stay mid-range tanks. They're not really going to get right in your face, although sometimes you will, but typically you're trying to stay mid-range until someone's low or it's a good time to go in. Fiora. Fiora right now, Fiora's weird. I would probably put her at a 6 or a 7 out of 10. She's an amazing split pusher. She's not very good in team fights. She's right now, she's just terrible in team fights. There's too many champions right now that can disengage her, that can kite her, that can straight up just kill her. Like, even if you time your W amazingly, she's not that great right now. But 1v1 wise, she can 1v1 almost any tank. She can 1v1 most squishy champions, but I don't know, like, split pushing is getting nerfed once again, so maybe I'll even put that number down from a 6 to 7 out of 10, but at the moment I'd probably say she's a 6 to 7 out of 10. I would personally only pick Fiora if I knew they had no split pushers at all that can handle me, and if I knew for a fact that I'm going to be facing a tank. So I pick her into Tomkins a lot, actually. She's amazing into Tomkins. Gangplank. Gangplank right now is an 8 to 9 out of 10 as well, like Darius. His laning phase is extremely weak. Yeah, his laning phase is extremely weak. Like, even like the only way you'll get a good laning phase is if you're against a really bad laner, because his weakness is basically Fiora, Riven, like all these champions that can just get in his face and there's nothing he can do about it. Hecarim, Tryndamere, you know, like these kind of champions. Gangplank though is mid to late game, he just destroys team fights, and you'll pretty much solo carry a game as long as your team has some form of making them focus them and not you. Yeah, that's pretty much the best way to put Gangplank, but I wouldn't pick Gangplank if your team doesn't have any engage at all, and if their team has too hard of engage. Like if they have like Rammus and Volibear, which these are bad examples, but you get my point. If they have like Rammus, Volibear, and stuff like that, then Gangplank's amazing because they have to run up to you. So if you just barrel everywhere, they'll never be able to gauge on you. But if they have like a Zac, Malphite, or something like that, then Gangplank's probably not as good. It can still work, but he's not as good as he would be in the other against the other situation. Garen right now, I'd put him at as a 1 out of 10, maybe a 2 out of 10. He's probably the worst top laner in the game right now. He just gets kited too hard in lane. He doesn't really do much damage, and his damage, even that little damage he does do, you can just simply walk away from it. He doesn't really have that much CC, he can't really peel, not a very good team fighter. He definitely can't 1v1 against anyone late game, like he's not a good split pusher at all. Yeah. That's really enough said about him. Gnar, I'd probably put Gnar at a 4 to 5 out of 10, believe it or not, because Gnar, he may have amazing potential, but in solo queue I just think he's really bad, and he's always pretty much been really bad except for his release when he was really strong. Like, he was too strong. You can still do good in lane, like you can really pressure hard as Gnar, you can be really annoying. But I just feel like with the HP gen being so low and all this, and you have to coordinate your rage, and you have to really control it, and there's just too many things that make it kind of too hard to really do anything. His teamfight potential's good, but it can also be really bad. His 1v1 split pushing's okay, but it's not amazing. I mean, yeah, Gnar's just like your average Joe. He's not really amazing, but he's not terrible either. It's just, I don't think I'd pick him. As you can see, I don't pick him, but Hecarim's about to get some huge nerfs to his mana and some other things, so I would actually stop playing Hecarim. But at the moment, Hecarim's actually pretty strong. He loses really hard though to champions like Irelia or anyone that has constant like stun locks or slow locks. They can destroy Hecarim, like Darius. But he can destroy pretty much every other champion. He's a very strong laner. Yeah, but once they nerf his mana, he's just not going to be good at all. But I would put him at a 6 to 7 out of 10. He's a pretty strong team fighter, but believe it or not, his ult has a really long CD, so you have to use it wisely. And it's kind of hard to engage without your ult, so that's like a really minus for me with Hecarim. But aside from that, Hecarim's pretty good. I don't know how to pronounce this. Eloy, the new champion. She's still pretty fairly new, so I can't really 100% say like I mastered her or anything, but at the same time, I feel like she's just too predictable. I feel like that's the biggest issue. Basically, she's kind of clunky and weird. Like, all your damage basically comes from your ult, and if it's not your ult, then it's your E. But the E, I mean, like, granted, if they buff it, it'll be like insanely annoying, but at the moment, it feels like it's just too weak. Like, you E them, and then most of the time the champion will just stay behind their minions, but if you do E, say me as Darius, I'm just going to walk up to you and I'm going to auto you tons, and you're not going to be able to get that spirit low. And even if you make them a vessel and you do a full damage, they'll only take like 200, 300 damage. Like, it's like laughable damage, and after that they become a vessel, sure, but like all they do is they dodge the tentacles because they're really easy to predict, and they give you a giant line that shows you where it's going to hit, and you just dodge it and hit it twice and it dies, and you do that 3 times, and by the other biggest thing is that her tentacles give you 5 gold. I would say on average against Eloy in like a typical laning phase, I get a collective like probably 500, at the very least 300 gold from her tentacles. Like, it's ridiculous. They basically just feed you. So, and then her ult, like, yeah, her ult's strong. It's really strong, actually, but the thing is that she has no CC with it, so you can simply just walk away when she ults, and then she's useless. No CC, no escapes, can't get camped. Not a very good champ right now. I would probably rate her, she's better than Karen at least, but I would probably rate her a 3 to 4 out of 10. Irelia right now, she's an extremely strong split pusher, probably the strongest in the game. Actually, I don't really think there's very many champions that can 1v1 her aside from like a Malphite, which directly counters what she's trying to do. But even then, I've beat Malphites, but I think those Malphites are just bad. But I think Irelia right now is probably a 8 to 9 out of 10. Could even be just a 7 to 8 out of 10. That's a really close one for me, but basically your laning phase is actually really good because she works so well with the corrupting potion. It's kind of ridiculous. And then once you hit level 6, your power spike's just too huge, and your E is spammable, which is annoying. Like, you can just perma slow and perma stun people basically. So yeah, and then the amount of true damage with max attack speed and fervor right now, she's just ridiculous. When they nerf fervor, she'll probably drop a lot, but at the moment she's kind of ridiculous. I don't even get rage blade anymore after the nerf. I just get triforce and I still destroy. So I think Irelia is a little ridiculous right now as far as split pushing, but team fights, she's not very good. The only time you want a team fight is if you know for a fact they don't have very much peel, and there's a champion that you can dive easily, like a Kog'Maw or Twitch or something, and you can just get in, kill them quickly, and then maybe kill one more guy. And that's like what you're looking to do as Irelia. You're not really going to be able to pill at all, and you're also not really going to be able to engage and fight a team off all by yourself, really. You're more of a split pusher and a 1v1er. Jax. I think Jax is just a worse version of Irelia right now. I would probably say Jax is a 7 to 8 out of 10, maybe even a 6 to 7 out of 10. Jax right now, I think his laning phase is still not that great. Like, with Fervor, obviously it buffed him a lot. And there's certain matchups that he's just ridiculous against, but there's certain matchups that he just can't handle at all. And his 1v1 potential is good. One of the best in the game, but I still think even Fiora beats him 1v1. I think a well-played Tryndamere beats him 1v1. I honestly think Darius even can beat him 1v1, which is like pretty sad when he's like a fighter kind of champ. Irelia can beat him 1v1 fairly easily, actually. You know, there's just too many champions that can destroy Jax right now. So I would just pick Irelia over him. But if you're like one of those guys that only knows how to right click and that's like your style, then Irelia and Jax would be your two mains. Jace, I don't really play Jace at all, but I've seen Jace. I think he's okay, but he's not that great. Definitely go Fervor on him. I see some try like Thunderlords and stuff. I would probably say he's a 4 to 5 out of 10. You can stack Fervor really fast, which is nice, but you're really squishy. You die really fast. You don't, for an auto attacker and like all this stuff that's supposed to be like an ADC, you actually just don't scale very well at all because your kit doesn't really have anything aside from your W. But then you're pretty much all AD, so anyone who stacks armor against you won't take very much damage. And you run out of mana very quickly early game, so there's this, all that stuff adds up to me thinking Jace isn't that great. Kale, I would say she's played top lane. Kale's not very great right now. I would probably say she's a 4 to 5 out of 10, maybe even a 3 to 4. You're just too squishy, like, and your damage is all DPS. And she has nice damage, but it takes too long to ramp up with her ult being such a short, not short cooldown, but I mean it is a fairly short cooldown. But with her ult only lasting like 2 seconds, which obviously if it lasts too long like it used to, then it's ridiculous. But when it doesn't last long enough, then simply you activate your ult, you get CC during it, and then they kill you. So there's really not much you can do as Kale right now. She's just not that great. Lissandra, I think Lissandra's still really strong. A lot of people don't know that. I think she's a 6 to 7 out of 10. She's not very good at 1v1ing, obviously. She's not very good at dueling, but her laning phase is super safe. She can basically get out of anything, any ganks. If you need an AP top, I would say this is definitely the AP top to go at the moment. She has a very strong team fight. With the recent buffs to her ultimate, you can actually bait a lot of people in team fights, and it's a way better Zhonya's now when it used to be just a Zhonya's with damage, because it heals you now. So I would say Lissandra is really good if you need a mage top. Lulu right now, she's just Lulu. She's strong. I would probably say she's a 6 to 7 out of 10. Some people say she's the most broken thing ever top lane right now, but I would disagree. She has a very safe lane. She's actually a hardcore lane bully in certain matchups. She can survive any ganks. She's very supporty later. If you go the Lich Bane build, you can actually do a lot of damage as Lulu. But the issue is you're still fairly squishy. Well, yeah, they can't really catch up to you at the same time. Your damage isn't really amazing late game because you only have 2 abilities that do damage and then your auto attacks, which you don't really just, like, if you're going to go damage, you don't really do enough damage. And her split pushing's okay if you get a lead, like, especially if you snowball, then her split pushing's amazing. But if you don't snowball, your split pushing's not that great. So Lulu's just okay. Malphite right now, I would say Malphite is insanely strong right now. I would put Malphite at an 8 to 9. Maybe even my first 9 to 10 of all the champions. It's a toss-up between those two. Malphite simply right now, you win lane too hard. There's very few lanes he loses, actually. Like Darius, he'll lose to Darius. That's a big issue for him. Like, you can't even safe farm against Darius, like, because if you try to, he'll constantly poke you down, and his passive counters your passive, so it's like, it's a very annoying lane for Malphite. Yeah, aside from Darius, though, there really isn't any counters at all. Like, a lot of people thought AP counters Malphite, but the thing is that, no, it doesn't, because there's so many ways he can survive the burst, and he can just out-damage you, and, yeah, I mean, max E, then max W, though. I see some Malphites weirdly max Q, or even level Q, and in the entire laning phase, I don't level Q unless I'm getting a gank, or if I'm if I feel like a lot of times he's surviving with like barely any HP and I just can't catch up to them and it's a certain champ like that, then I'll get a 1 point in Q just for the movement speed boost, but never spam your Q. I literally just max E and W, and I never put a point in Q in most matchups until I have to. So yeah. Maokai right now, I think Maokai's in a terrible spot actually. I tried him out. His ultimate was a little annoying, but now it got nerfed on the cooldown, so you can't really spam it as much. And he has a decent amount of hidden run potential, but the issue is when he's trying to run, So yeah, and then he's not really that tanky. Like, you have to build extreme tanky to get tanky, and he runs out of mana extremely fast, which is a huge issue for him right now. I'd probably say he's a 4 to 5 out of 10. So he's not terrible, but he's kind of just average. I would not play him. Nasus is actually in just one of his strongest moments he's ever been in, because with the HP regen and the increase on all heals, I would say Nasus is really strong. His dueling potential is amazing. His 1v1, I'm trying to think of a champion that can beat him 1v1. Like, as long as you get to like where you have decent stacks and it's sort of late game where you have a good item like a Frozen Heart against Irelia, you'll even beat Irelia. So, and I said Irelia is probably the best 1v1er in the game, so that should tell you a lot. Yeah, Nasus, just split pushing wise, no one can match him. I think he's just such a strong split pusher right now, but obviously split pushing won't win you the game. That's a huge issue about Nasus. That's why I would only put him at a 6 to 7. And the other issue is you need that Frozen Heart. You need to make it to late game. You need to get those stacks. And that can be a pretty huge issue if your team's behind. So you're kind of relying on your team to carry you. Believe it or not, all Nasus players rely on their team to carry them early game. And a lot of times they rely on their team to not engage 4v5s while they do split push and put all that pressure and kill the enemy top laner. So that's a huge issue about Nasus, but aside from that, the fact that he's just the strongest 1v1er in the game, top lane wise, I think, unless I find another one later on, I would definitely say he's very annoying. Like, I think he even beats Darius 1v1 late game, although that's possibly wrong, because Wither doesn't affect Darius too much, but I've never played against Nasus' Darius, so I can't really say from experience, but I would say at the very least this matchup's close, which is ridiculous because Nasus is a tank. So definitely pretty good champ right now. Believe it or not, I've seen Nautilus and Nocturne tops, but I don't think I really want to talk about them because one, I don't play them extremely a lot and I don't really understand them that much. Olaf, from what I've heard, Olaf is really weak right now. Just from what I've heard, I haven't tried him this season actually, but what I heard, you just run out of mana too fast. Too many lane matchups with Fervor and such just beat you too hard. Darius and them beat you too hard. Like, there's just... Olaf was a lane bully before this patch. He was a dominating lane bully, but at the moment I think... I mean, I haven't played him personally. Maybe he is still the dominant lane bully he used to be and people are just idiots, but at the moment I feel like Olaf's not that great. He's probably... judging by what I've heard, he's probably a 4 to 5 or 6 out of 10, and not even like maybe a 5 to 6. Pantheon, I've seen quite a few Pantheons. In certain matchups, Pantheon is absolutely actually broken, but in other matchups, Pantheon just gets destroyed too hard. So I think Pantheon's in a really bad spot. But for mid lane, he's way stronger, and for jungle, I don't even know why people really try him top lane, but he's still a decent top laner, especially in certain matchups. Like, Pantheon destroys Tryndamere, for instance, which people thought for some reason was OP at one point, but anyways, even with Warriors Blast, I didn't think Tryndamere was really OP, but, I'll say Pantheon's probably a 4 to 5 out of 10. He's a decent lane bully in certain matchups, but in certain matchups, he just gets destroyed too hard, and then he can't snowball in lane bully, and he's just too weak, and he has huge mana issues in lanes that will trade with him, so a lot of issues there. Poppy right now is just weird. She's in a spot where, like, you have to get to late game. It's the same as Nasus basically, but so probably 6 to 7, same thing. She's a dominating 1v1er, but unlike Nasus, she's actually really good in team fights because you can just one-shot somebody late game. But once again, you have to make it to late game. You're basically saying I rely on my team to do everything for me until late game, and then I'll be unstoppable. So yeah, with the rework, I think Poppy will actually be a good top laner. I think she'll be a 7 to 8 out of 10, maybe even a 6 to 7, but that's just me assuming. Okay, Renekton. Renekton right now, a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I think he's in an absolutely terrible spot. I think there's still some matchups Renekton does okay in, but there's no matchups Renekton really destroys. And Renekton's one of my hardcore mains, so it makes me sad to say that, but I feel like there's just too many matchups that just decimate him now. Like, I used to destroy Darius as Renekton, but right now I would not pick Renekton into Darius. I pick Darius into Renekton now, and there's just Like, I mean, the best master you can go is probably Thunderlords or Fervor, because Renekton sucks with Grasping and dying. So, and then with Fervor, like, there's all the other Fervor champions basically just beat you. Fiora, like, Fiora will just play safe, she'll get 2 items, and then she'll stomp you. You know, there's too many champions. Like, Irelia destroys you, you know, I'm sure I've beaten some Irelias with them, but it's probably not Irelia that didn't main Irelia or play Irelia, so it's kind of like, it doesn't count. And I think he's just in a terrible spot right now. He can't really 1v1 very well unless you snowball hardcore. His team fight is one of the strongest in the game still, so that's the reason why I would pick him, is because his mid-game team fights are so strong. But why pick him when you can just pick Darius, which is basically a better version of him at the moment. So I would say Renekton's probably a 5 to 6 out of 10. Maybe 6 to 7. His team fight, once again, is amazing, but his split pushing is probably one of the worst in the game unless you snowball super hard. Riven actually is one of her worst spots she's ever been in, considering that she was one of the strongest champions for so long top lane. It's dominated so hard top lane for a very long time, probably since Season 3. They're about to buff her again, though, then I think she'll be ridiculous, because they're buffing Deathfire at the same time. So I think definitely you always run Deathfire on her. A lot of people run Thunderlords at the moment, but I think once they buff Deathfire, they'll always run Deathfire on Riven. I think Riven, her 1v1 potential is extremely strong. Her teamfight potential is not very good. Her teamfight potential, you're basically just going to kill still off your allies, and you're going to kite out and hope the enemies are dumb enough to chase you, basically. But her team fight is, or her 1v1 potential is pretty high, although there are certain matchups you lose pretty hard late game. But you basically have to snowball as Riven. That's like her thing, is that she doesn't really scale that well, even though some people will disagree with that, but she doesn't scale well. But if you're way ahead of your opponents, and you'll just blow them up before they can even blink, because that's the way her kit works, which it's kind of toxic, but that's the way it works. Probably say Riven's a 5 to 6 out of 10 right now. Rumble's in a terrible spot. Absolutely terrible. Too many champions destroy him right now. Yeah, and then he's mainly, obviously he can't split push ever. No, he's never been good at split pushing, but he's always been a team fighter. But the issue right now is that his team fight just isn't really good enough, and you're not going to make it out of the laning phase. So like, Irelia and them just destroy him too hard. You're basically letting your lane opponent snowball for free. And I would just not pick Rumble. I think Rumble's probably 3 to 4 out of 10 right now. He's just terrible. Ryze right now, Ryze is absolutely a monster if you can play him. But the thing is, I can't play Ryze at all. But Ryze, from what I've seen, he can just perma-snare people and destroy people. He's one of the strongest 1v1ers in the game. He's one of the strongest team fighters in the game. I would say Ryze is a 10 out of 10 if you can't play him. If you can't play him, he's probably a 4 to 5 out of 10. And I'm not even kidding there. So definitely main Ryze if you're looking to be a one-trick, and you will win every game. Like, Ryze mains just destroy everybody. He's a ridiculous champion right now if you can actually play him. An insane kit. Shen is in an absolutely terrible spot for top lane. He's even in a bad spot for support, but this is about top lane. Shen just gets destroyed by way too many champions right now. His passive doesn't do enough damage. His ult has too long of a cooldown. It actually doesn't do enough anymore. His taunt's been nerfed too hard. His shield's not even that good. Yeah, Shen's just a terrible champion at the moment. I would rate Shen a 2 out of 10. Singed is interesting. He actually has a really high win rate right now, but I'm not sure what caused that. I think Singed isn't that great. I guess because the towers were weaker this preseason, but I still don't think Shen's that great. Or Singed. I think Singed is probably a 4 to 5 out of 10. Yeah. He obviously he can't 1v1 at all late game. He can't even 1v1 most champions mid game, and his team fight's actually okay, but it's not the best. And he has to get a lot of items to be able to team fight as well, which is a huge issue. Scion is actually stronger than a lot of people think after the nerfs, but I still don't think Sion's the best. I think he's an okay tank, but I don't know why you'd play him when you can play Malphite, Darius, you know. Like, these champions are just better tanks. Mundo, Tomkins. So, but if all those are banned and your team really just needs a tank, then maybe you go Scion. Like, he's still okay. His cooldowns are really long. You can't really lane bully. You're kind of giving your lane opponent a free farm lane. he didn't really gain anything amazing from the new masteries. The HP regen helps out his passive a bit, but aside from that, it doesn't really help out anything. So, I'd probably say Scion right now. He can't really 1v1 very well, especially late game, even early game anymore. He's not the hardcore lane bull he used to be. His team fighting is pretty good. I'd probably say he's a 5 to 6 out of 10 right now, in my opinion. Tomkins. A lot of people are like Tomkins OP, but I think Tomkins is just good. There's a lot of champions that actually hardcore counter him, in my opinion, like Fiora, which a lot of people don't realize for some reason, and I even go play the Ruin King Fiora against him, and the last time I did it, I went like 10-1 and like 9 or something, and just decimated him. But the reason why I believe Fiora just hard counters him is because he can't do anything against her. Like, if you try to W, you're just, if you try to, W her, she's gonna W you, and there's just too many things. Like, his W has a really long cooldown. Like, a lot of people don't realize that. His W has an almost 10-second cooldown. And that's counting from when he spits you out. It's not like counting like when he starts to eat you. So, there's a very long time you get to trade with him after he uses his W. Yes, his W does a ridiculous amount of damage, but if you get magic resist against him, you just destroy him. He's all magic damage. Like, people don't realize that. Like, yeah, he'll auto-attack you a lot, but he's all magic damage. Like, everything in this kit is magic damage. So if you get a lot of magic resist and his W doesn't do anywhere near as much damage, like reducing it by half, which is just like 200 MR, will make his W only do like 25% of your max HP, which, yeah, it sounds like a lot, but when that's all his damage pretty much, it's not that bad. So Tomkins isn't actually that strong. Although he is really good though, but he's not good 1v1. He's an amazing team fighter, but he has a very high skill cap, I think, in team fights. So I would probably rate him as a 6 to 7 out of 10 right now. And believe it or not, in Diamond right now, he actually has one of the lowest win rates out of every top laner. So that, in my opinion, backs what I think about him. Teemo, absolutely terrible right now. He's almost the same as Garen, except for he's a little bit better than Garen. He's probably a 2 out of 10. Deathfire doesn't work with his E, which it's just terrible for Teemo. I think Deathfire should work with his E. I don't think it'd make him insanely broken, so they should make it happen. Yeah, Teemo's just way too weak right now. You don't do any damage. Like, Nasus will literally just sit there and let you hit him, and he'll heal off of you hitting him. So, not very good 1v1er, not very good in lane, not very good team. It's terrible team fighting, so stay away from Teemo. Trundle, I think Trundle's a surprise pick right now, and a lot of people don't want to listen to it, but I think Trundle's actually pretty decent. The issue with Trundle, though, is you have to play minorly safe early game, and if people run away from your spots and don't fight you whenever you have like your W up or your Q on them or your ult on them, then you're pretty weak. So you have to make sure you save all that for team fights and you get it in a nice spot where they can't just kite you back. 1v1 wise, he's actually extremely strong. Yeah, he's pretty strong 1v1er, I would say. Really strong duelist, can take towers very easily. Most people are playing him jungle though to get across from his not so great laning phase. I would say Trundle's probably at the moment a 6 to 7 out of 10. Not actually a bad champion. Tryndamere, I would say obviously he's a very good split pusher, but not the best. And his team fights aren't that great unless you snowball. So I would say Tryndamere's probably a 5 to 6 out of 10 right now. Because his laning phase isn't that great either unless you get some lucky crits. It's very RNG dependent, which I would stay away from. Vladimir at the moment I actually think is very weak, but some people will disagree because the Masteries did help him a little bit with his healing. But the thing is, they helped everyone else with their healing, so they can sustain against his damage and his DPS, because he doesn't really burst you 100-0. So, yeah, I would just say Vlad's probably a 3 out of 10, maybe a 4. He's just fairly weak. I would stay away from him. And then I would say probably last guy played top really. I mean, I guess Wukong and Yorick would be probably the last two guys that are normally played top, even though Wukong's probably more jungle now. Wukong, really weak. He's very weak 1v1er. Unless you snowballed, it's just he's super weak 1v1. He's very easy to predict in lane. There's a lot of matchups he sucks in, like Renekton, Darius, Irelia, Jax, like, I mean, Tomkins. I mean, there's like so many matchups he's terrible in. His team fight is okay, but I've actually came to the conclusion that his team fight's not as great as I hoped for. Like, it's just not amazing. Yeah, you're not really gonna auto attack. It should be a lot for fervor to be amazing, and during your ult, like, even though you reduce armor, like Darius does the same thing while having 1,000 true damage ult. So Wukong's just not in a very good spot right now. I think he's probably a 5 out of 10, so he's like average champ. It's not terrible. If you're playing against a good player, Wukong's way worse, but if you're not, then Wukong's okay. Yorick's in a terrible spot, but he's supposed to be there. Some people say if they buff him, no one will like this game anymore, because when he was good, he was annoying. I think they should just rework this champion, but at the moment, I would say Yorick's probably a 1 to 2 out of 10. Your ult's completely useless. You're a lane bully that doesn't do enough damage to really lane bully most people. You lose pretty much every 1v1 to everyone, and at any point in the game, your team fight's absolutely insanely terrible. So yeah, terrible champion. Almost as bad as Garen. I would still rate him a little bit higher than Garen, though. And there you guys go. There's an entire rundown of what I feel in the preseason is what it is top lane. I can do one for support if this video goes well. If it doesn't, that's fine. Thank you guys for watching. I could do coaching, and tell you what, if this, if there's a lot of people commenting saying like, oh, I want coaching, or even if there's people like saying like, oh, I want to know how to get to your elo, or I want to know tips for this elo, or I want to know tips for this lane, or things like that, then maybe I could do that. So if I see it in the comments or anything like that, then I'll do that for you guys. So see you guys, and hope you all have good days.